The Black Mountain was the kind of road that made men question their decisions. It wound through a forest so thick that moonlight struggled to reach the ground, arriving in pale, broken shards that trembled across the undergrowth like dying candles. The trees here were old, ancient. Their bark had turned black centuries ago, and locals whispered that they had turned black because of what they had witnessed. Nobody drove this road after sunset. Nobody, that is, except Aryan and Zara. They were newlyweds, married only 3 weeks ago, still drunk on the sweet madness of new love. Aryan, 26 years old, worked as a wildlife photographer, always chasing the next adventure, the next perfect shot. Zara, 24, was a university lecturer in history who had a particular passion for old architecture and forgotten places. She was, by any measure, extraordinarily beautiful. Dark hair that fell past her shoulders like a curtain of night, eyes the color of warm honey, a face that people turned to look at twice on the street. She was also stubborn, brilliant, and fearless. Or at least, she had always believed herself to be fearless. The assignment had seemed like a gift from the universe. Aryan's photography magazine had commissioned a piece on abandoned colonial-era architecture, and Zara had leapt at the opportunity to accompany him. She had been researching the Haveli of Kali Pahadi, the Black Mountain Mansion, for 2 years. Built in 1887 by a British officer named Colonel Hargrove, the Haveli had been abandoned in 1923 under circumstances that the local records described only as a matter of great spiritual disturbance. Every historian who tried to investigate had eventually moved on, deterred by locals who would not speak of it, or by something else entirely, something they would not name. Zara was not deterred. She had never been deterred by anything in her life. "You're sure about this?" Aryan asked, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter as the headlights swept across yet another curve in the narrow mountain road. The GPS had stopped working 20 minutes ago, and his phone had one bar of signal that flickered in and out like a nervous heartbeat. "I've been sure about this for 2 years, Zara said, not looking up from her notebook. She was reading by torchlight, her handwriting cramped and neat across pages of research notes. "Besides, we already told the magazine we had the shots. Turning back now would be embarrassing." "Embarrassing," Aryan repeated flatly. "Yes. That's what I'm worried about. Being embarrassed." Zara smiled and reached over to squeeze his knee. "I love you." "I love you too," he said. "That's exactly why I'm terrified." They saw the Haveli before they expected to. The forest simply ended, abruptly, without gradation, as though the trees had decided collectively that they would come no closer, and there it stood on a broad, flat clearing at the edge of the mountain's peak, silhouetted against a sky bruised purple and black with storm clouds. It was magnificent. Even in the darkness, even in ruin, it was magnificent. The Haveli was enormous, 3 stories of colonial architecture fused with Mughal design, an architectural marriage of 2 worlds that had produced something unlike either. Broad arched windows lined every floor, their glass long gone, gaping open like the hollow eyes of a skull. Carved stone jalis, latticed screens, still clung to some of the upper openings, their intricate patterns somehow intact despite a century of abandonment. 2 towers rose from either end of the building, capped with domes that had partially collapsed, their ribs of stone jutting toward the sky like broken fingers. Climbing plants had devoured the lower third of the structure, thick ropes of vine pressing into the stone with patient, vegetable determination. The main gate, 2 massive iron doors set into a carved stone archway, stood open. Not broken open. Simply open. As though someone had unlocked them recently and walked through. "Oh," Zara breathed. She had stepped out of the car without realizing she'd done it. "Oh, it's perfect." Aryan stood beside her, camera already in hand, trying to frame the Haveli through his viewfinder and finding that no frame was quite large enough. He was a professional, trained to look at things analytically, composition, light, texture. But something about the Haveli resisted his professional eye. It kept making him feel something instead of think something. It made him feel watched. "We should set up inside before that storm hits," he said. They unloaded their equipment, sleeping bags, food supplies, camera gear, Zara's research materials, and carried it through the open gate into the Haveli's central courtyard. The courtyard was vast, centered on a dry fountain whose carved stone basin was filled with dead leaves and the papery husks of insects. The courtyard walls rose on all four sides, windows staring inward from every floor. A covered veranda ran around the entire perimeter at ground level, its wooden columns rotted to varying degrees but still standing. The floor was cracked stone, grass and wildflowers pushing through every fissure. Aryan set up their camp in the far corner of the veranda, close to an interior door that he checked. It opened into a large, empty room that smelled of dust and old stone. Good. If the rain came hard, they had shelter. He unrolled the sleeping bags and began setting up his portable light stands for shooting. Zara had already wandered to the center of the courtyard. She was standing at the dry fountain, one hand resting on its stone edge, her torch moving slowly across the carved decorations. Her hair stirred in the wind that was picking up ahead of the storm. She looked, Aryan thought, like she belonged here. Like a figure in an old painting. He raised his camera and took the shot. He did not notice, not then, the shadow that moved in the window directly above her. A shadow that was large and still, and had the rough shape of a man standing at attention. The storm arrived at 10 o'clock with the theatrical conviction of something that had been planning its entrance for days. Lightning split the sky in long, jagged columns. Thunder rolled across the mountain like artillery. Rain hammered the Haveli's stone floors and streamed from its broken gutters in silver curtains. They retreated to the interior room, larger than it had looked from outside, its walls covered in faded murals that Zara was immediately fascinated by. The murals depicted scenes of court life, hunting parties, musicians, and dancers. But as she moved her torch across them, she began to notice other things woven into the paintings. Darker things. Figures at the margins of the grand scenes, elongated, angular shapes that were almost human but not quite, watching the courtly festivities from the edges of the paintings. In some panels, the watchers had reached into the main scene, their long fingers extended toward the painted women, who seemed unaware of the touch. Aryan, Zara said slowly, "Come look at this." He came and looked. Together, they studied the figures in silence for a long moment. Jinn, Zara said softly. The builder incorporated jinn imagery into the murals. It's not uncommon in architecture from this region during this period. There was a belief that acknowledging the presence of spirits was better than pretending they didn't exist. You painted them, gave them their place in the story, so they felt respected. It was a kind of. She searched for the word, coexistence. Did it work? Aryan asked. Zara was quiet for a moment. The family abandoned the house in 1923. Right. They ate dinner, sandwiches and thermos coffee, and Aryan shot interiors while Zara made notes. The Haveli was extraordinary material. Every room they explored on the ground floor held something remarkable. Carved marble door frames, tilework in complex geometric patterns, wooden ceilings with inlaid panels. And in every room, the same thing. Those marginal figures in whatever decorative art remained, always watching, always reaching. By midnight, the storm had settled into a steady, heavy rain. They had returned to their room. Aryan was reviewing his shots on his camera's LCD screen. Zara had set up a small lantern and was reading, cross-legged on her sleeping bag, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Then the lantern flickered. Just once. A single, sharp flutter of the flame. Zara looked up. The room felt different. She could not have said how. The temperature was the same. The rain sound was the same. Aryan was right there, 4 feet away, scrolling through photographs. Everything was exactly as it had been, except that something in the room was watching her. She could feel it the way you feel the sun on your back. Not a thought, not a decision, but a physical sensation. A weight of attention. She scanned the room slowly, trying to look like she was simply stretching her neck, and found nothing. The doorway was empty. The windows were shuttered from the inside. The corners held only shadow. She told herself it was the murals. Spending hours looking at paintings of watching figures had primed her imagination. She went back to her book. 30 seconds later, someone knocked on the wall behind her. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Aryan was on his feet before the echo died. What was that? I don't know. Zara was standing too, her book fallen, her voice carefully level. Old building. Settlement sounds. The rain. That was not settlement sounds. He moved to the wall, pressed his hand against the stone. Cold. Just stone. He knocked back, twice. Silence. Then, from directly behind where his fist had struck, 2 slow knocks in response. They stared at each other. There is someone else in this building, Aryan said. Or something, Zara said, and immediately wished she hadn't. They searched the ground floor together, Aryan with a heavy torch that doubled as a weapon, Zara with her research notebook pressed against her chest as though the pages might protect her. They found nothing. No person, no animal large enough to knock. The exterior doors were all sealed by decades of damp and swelling wood. None had been opened recently. The windows on the ground floor were all latched from inside. We go back, Aryan said firmly. We lock our door, we sleep, we leave at first light. There's no lock on the door, Zara pointed out. He looked at her. She looked at him. We sleep, he said. We leave at first light. Zara slept first. She was always able to sleep. It was something that had baffled and slightly annoyed every roommate she'd ever had. She could set aside her thoughts like setting aside a coat, sink down into unconsciousness within minutes of lying down. Aryan sat up with his torch and his camera, one eye on the door, reviewing his photographs to stay awake. He had taken over 400 shots since they arrived. He went through them methodically, courtyard shots, interior details, the murals. Good work. Some exceptional work, honestly. The Haveli photographed beautifully in the dramatic light of the storm. He stopped on a photograph. It was one of the early shots, the courtyard, Zara at the fountain, her torch held upward so that light caught her face and the carved stone basin around her. He remembered taking it. He had been thinking how much she looked like she belonged there. In the window above her, the first floor window, directly overhead, there was a figure. He had not noticed it when he took the shot. He had not noticed it when he reviewed the shot an hour ago. But now, with the night deepened and his eyes adjusted to the screen's glow, he could see it plainly. A man. Standing at the window. Very tall. Too tall, he thought, for the window's proportions. Dark enough to be a shadow, but with too much texture, too much presence, to be merely shadow. The figure was not looking at the camera. It was looking at Zara. Aryan's hand tightened on the camera. He looked at the timestamp. The photograph had been taken at 9:47 p.m. They had arrived at 9:30. When he had taken this shot, they had been in the Haveli for 17 minutes. Whatever was in the window had been watching his wife since before they had even fully unloaded the car. He got to his feet and went to wake Zara. He found her already awake. She was sitting upright in her sleeping bag, staring at the doorway. In the doorway there was nothing. The corridor beyond was dark. Zara, he said softly. She didn't look at him. He was here, she said. Her voice was strange. Flat. Like someone reading from a page. He was standing right there. He is very tall. He has been here for a very long time. She paused. He says he has been waiting. The hair on Aryan's arms stood up completely. Zara. Sharper this time. She blinked. Turned to look at him. The flatness left her face all at once, replaced by confusion and then alarm. What happened? I was asleep. You were talking. You said someone was waiting. I was dreaming, she said, but she said it the way people say something they're not sure of yet, testing the words for solidity, finding them hollow. I was dreaming about a man. He was standing in our doorway. She stopped. What? He was very beautiful, she said quietly. That's a strange thing to say about something that frightened me so much. But he was. In the dream. Extraordinarily beautiful. And he was looking at me the way. She stopped again. Shook her head. It was a dream. Aryan showed her the photograph. She looked at it for a long time without speaking. There are things in the world older than human memory. Older than cities, older than language, older than the first stories told around the first fires. Some of these things are indifferent to human existence, vast and cold and unaware of the small warm creatures that scurry across the earth below them. But some of them are aware. Some of them watch. The one who inhabited the Haveli of Kali Pahadi was of the watching kind. He had no name that a human tongue could form. The locals called him Kala Saya, the Black Shadow, and lit incense at the forest's edge as an offering, as a boundary acknowledgement. You stay there, we stay here. The arrangement had functioned for generations. Those who respected the boundary were left in peace. Those who crossed it were not harmed. He was not, by nature, a harming entity, but they were visited, and being visited was its own kind of damage. He had been in the Haveli since the building began. He had watched the British officer lay the cornerstone. He had watched the masons work and the carpenter hang the doors and the painter apply the murals. He had studied the artist who painted his kind into the margins of those murals, an old man with kind eyes who had sensed his presence and given him form as a gesture of respect. He had appreciated that. He had watched the family that inhabited the house for 36 years, their children born and raised in these rooms, their deaths and celebrations and ordinary days. He had observed the colonel's obsession with the mountain, the daughters' games in the courtyard, the slow unraveling that came when they began to sense him watching. He had not meant to unsettle them. He simply could not stop watching. It was what he was. In a century of solitude after the family fled, he had grown accustomed to stillness. Then the girl arrived. He had felt her approaching long before the headlights swept through the forest. Felt her the way he felt shifts in weather, or the roots of the old trees settling deeper into the mountain. A pressure. A change in the quality of the air. When she stepped out of the car and looked up at the Haveli with those honey-colored eyes wide open and unafraid, something happened inside him that had not happened in a very long time. He moved to the window above her. He could not help himself. She was extraordinary. Not merely beautiful, though she was that, with a completeness that suggested the universe had concentrated some particular intention in her assembly, but something more than beautiful. She was alive in a way that most humans managed only fitfully. Fully present in her own skin, electric with interest and intelligence, walking into the ruined Haveli like she owned it, like she was not afraid of anything it might contain. She was not afraid of him. That, more than anything else, was what he could not endure to look away from. He followed her through the rooms, not physically, not yet, but through the walls and floors and ceilings of the Haveli, which were his in the way that one's own body is one's. He watched her trace the carved marble with her fingertips. He watched her read the murals. When she pointed at the figures he had inspired the old artist to paint, his marginal selves in their frozen reaching, and spoke about them with knowledge and respect, he felt something he had no adequate name for. In the deepest part of the night, when her husband sat guard and she slept, he came to the doorway. He had not taken form in 60 years. He assembled himself carefully, drawing on shadow and cold air and the deep magnetism of stone. Tall. He had always been tall. He filled the doorway from the inside of the corridor and looked at her where she lay. In sleep, she felt him. He saw her face change, the small tension that comes when the dreaming mind brushes against something real. She turned toward him without waking. Her lips parted. He made himself look away. He was very old, and he had learned, over centuries, a few things about desire, that what you cannot have is best not gazed at directly. That wanting something that belongs to another world, another order of existence, is a kind of grief even before you have lost it. He dispersed before the husband turned around. "We are leaving," Aryan said. "The storm is still." "We are leaving," he said again, in a tone that Zara recognized as non-negotiable. In 3 weeks of marriage she had already catalogued his tones. This one, she understood, was reserved for situations where argument was not only pointless but potentially dangerous. She began to roll up her sleeping bag. They packed quickly and in silence, working by torchlight, the rain still heavy against the courtyard stone. Aryan shouldered the largest bag and went to check the gate. It was closed. Not fallen shut, there was no mechanism for that, the hinges were ancient and the gate opened inward. It had been closed. The iron bolt that they had not touched on arrival, that had been drawn back when they entered, had been slid home. Aryan gripped it and pulled. The bolt was cold, colder than the surrounding metal, colder than the night air, and it did not move. He braced his foot against the gate and pulled with both hands. Slowly, reluctantly, with a sound like a long groan, the bolt slid back. The gate swung open. The forest waited beyond, dark and dripping. "Go," he said to Zara. "Go to the car. I'll carry the rest." She went. He watched her cross the clearing to where the car sat, watched her open the door and get in, watched the interior light glow yellow and then cut off as the door shut. He went back for the remaining equipment, camera bag, tripod, Zara's research materials. It was when he was bent over the last bag, crouched on the veranda in the rain, that the lights went out. Not just his torch. All of them. Every light source he had left in the Haveli, the lantern, the 2 portable LED panels, the backup torch, all of them went dark simultaneously, leaving him in a blackness so complete that he could not see his own hands. He did not move. He crouched in the dark, his hand on the bag, and he forced himself to breathe slowly and think clearly. He had a lighter in his pocket. He had his phone, which had no signal but had a torch function. He was not injured. The gate was open. Zara was in the car. He needed to get the bag and walk to the gate and get in the car and drive away. That was all. He reached for his phone. "She should not leave," said a voice. Aryan did not move. He had read once that the most important thing in a dangerous situation was to not be controlled by the instinct to move, to flee, to react before you could think. He did not move. He crouched in the dark with his hand on his phone and he said, with a steadiness that cost him enormously, "Who's there?" "She should not leave," the voice said again. It was deep. Not simply low-pitched but deep in the way that certain sounds are deep, resonant, as though it was generated not by a pair of lungs and a larynx but by something much larger. "She understands this place. She is not afraid of it. That is rare. She is my wife," Aryan said. "She is leaving. We are both leaving." A long silence. The rain fell. Somewhere in the Haveli's upper floors, a door moved on its hinges. "I know what she is to you." The voice was, and this was the strangest part, the part Aryan would return to over and over in the months that followed, not threatening. It was something far more unsettling than threatening. It was sad. "I know what she is. I have watched her for hours and I know what she is, the way one knows a thing that you have waited for without knowing you were waiting." Aryan turned on his phone light. It cut through the dark and revealed the courtyard, the dry fountain, the gate open beyond. Nothing visible. No source for the voice. The sound had seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Listen to me," Aryan said, and he was surprised by his own voice. Calm, almost conversational, as though he was talking to a person, to a reasonable person capable of reason. "I hear you. I understand that you are not trying to hurt her. But she is mine, and she is human, and she belongs in the human world. That is where she has to be. That is where she has to go." Another silence. Longer this time. "Will she come back?" the voice said. And in those 4 words there was something so ancient and so lonely that Aryan felt his chest constrict in sympathy even as every nerve in his body was lit with fear. "I don't know," he said honestly. "That is her choice to make." He picked up the bag, straightened up, and walked to the gate. He did not run. He walked steadily, 1 step at a time, and the darkness did not stop him, and the gate was where it had been, and he walked through it without looking back. Zara was out of the car before he reached it. "What took so long?" "I was about to come back in." "Get in the car," he said. "Please." She looked at his face in the car's dim light and got in the car without another word. He threw the bag in the back, got in, and started the engine. As the car turned and its headlights swept across the Haveli's facade, Zara turned in her seat to look back. Every window on the front of the building held a light, a warm amber glow, moving and fluctuating, like dozens of candle flames. Every window. 3 floors, 12 windows per floor, each one lit from within. "Aryan," she said. "I see it," he said. He did not stop driving. In the uppermost window of the central tower, the highest point of the Haveli, there was a figure. Just the outline. Tall. Utterly still. Watching the car move down the road and into the forest, until the trees closed in and the Haveli was lost from sight. The lights in the windows went out all at once, like a single great breath blown across 100 candles. They drove through the night and reached the nearest town at 4 in the morning. They checked into a roadside hotel and sat on the bed in their room, and Aryan told her everything. The figure in the photograph, the voice in the courtyard, every word of the exchange. Zara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You talked to it," she said. "Someone had to. You asked it to let us leave." She was looking at her hands. "And it did." "Yes." Another silence. Outside the window, the first grey suggestion of dawn was beginning to thin the darkness. "In the dream," Zara said carefully, "he told me things about the Haveli, about its history. There is a room on the 3rd floor, the northeast corner, where the original builder kept a private library. It was sealed before the family left. The books are still there." She looked up at Aryan. "I could feel it when he said it, that it was true, that it was a gift. Information I couldn't have found in any archive." Aryan looked at her for a long moment. "Are you telling me you want to go back?" "I'm telling you what he gave me," she said. "I'm not telling you I'll act on it." But they both knew, in the way that people who love each other know things without saying them, that the conversation was not finished. That the road to Kali Pahadi had not seen the last of her. The magazine article ran 6 weeks later. It was illustrated with Aryan's photographs, the Haveli in stormlight, the murals, the carved marble, the dry fountain at the center of the courtyard, the jali screens laced with moonlight. The photographs were extraordinary. They were celebrated widely, reprinted in 3 countries, shortlisted for an international award. In every review of the photo series, critics noted the same thing, a quality in the images that was difficult to define. A sense of presence. A feeling, described variously as haunting, as yearning, as an almost unbearable loneliness, as if the building itself were watching. One critic wrote, "There is something in these photographs that has not been captured before, the sensation of being desired by a place. Not admired, not observed. Desired. It is deeply unsettling. It is the most beautiful series of architectural photographs I have seen in a decade." Aryan read the review on a Tuesday morning and sat with his coffee and said nothing for a long time. Then he showed it to Zara. She read it twice. She set down her own coffee cup very carefully. "He's still there," she said. "Yes," Aryan said. "Waiting." "Yes." She looked out the window at the ordinary street, the ordinary morning, the ordinary world going about its ordinary business. Then she said, very softly, "What do you think happens to something like that? Something that old, that alone, that devoted to something it cannot have?" Aryan thought about the voice in the dark. The sadness in it. The question, will she come back? "I think," he said carefully, "that it waits. The way it has always waited. 4 centuries. For the next thing worth watching. And if nothing comes, then it keeps waiting," he said. "Things like that always do." That night, Zara dreamed of a tall figure standing at a high window, looking out over a dark forest and a darker mountain, patient as stone, watching the road below for headlights that had not yet come but would, someday, come again. In the dream, she was not afraid. In the morning, she did not tell Aryan what she had dreamed. But she went to her desk and began, for the first time, to write the research proposal she had been avoiding for 6 weeks, a formal application to be submitted to the University Heritage Committee for a funded investigation of the sealed library on the 3rd floor, northeast corner, of the Haveli of Kali Pahadi. She titled it, Preliminary Survey of Undocumented Colonial-Era Archives, a Case Study. She wrote it in 3 hours without stopping. When she finished, she sat back and looked at what she had written, and in the deep quiet of the study she thought she heard, very faintly, from very far away, traveling across mountains and through forests and through the ordinary walls of an ordinary house, something that might have been the sound of a door being opened. Or perhaps just the building settling. Old buildings did that. She told herself it was the building. She submitted the proposal that afternoon.